So our next storyteller is Diane Clarkson, Pierce County prosecutor and the president of the Tacoma Pierce County Bar Association. Deputy prosecutor, I have that written down, and I just didn't read it. Thank you for correcting me. Diane Clarkson is the Pierce County deputy prosecutor and the president of the Tacoma Pierce County Bar Association. Diane, your extracurricular activities are just about as busy as Miriam. I have here that you've served with art commissions, domestic violence commissions, hate crime task forces. You're a past board member with the Urban League, Northwest Leadership Foundation, Tacoma Pierce County Bar Association, Pierce County Minority Bar Association, and you're currently a board member with Safe Streets. It's a lot. So that you were born in Washington, D.C., but you moved to a very segregated Birmingham, Alabama in 1968, and you were the first in your family to complete college and law school, but law is not Diane's first love. You've served in music ministry for churches in Birmingham, Kentucky, Washington, D.C., Tacoma, and Seattle. So you've got these two loves, music and law, and your story today is going to take us back to that moment in time when that first and second love collided. So tell us, how did that happen?
Thank you, Megan. That's a great picture. And I say that first before I get into my collision, is that the fellow in the back is my brother. He's passed away. Boy, already. My brother was so awesome. He was a math whiz. He was the chess champion in Birmingham, Alabama. He spoke fluent Latin, worked on memorizing the dictionary because he just loved to learn. We'd go on family trips and he'd take his botany books and his zoology books and we'd all be playing and he was studying. He was an incredible guy who got caught up. And I wish he had learned some of the lessons that I learned. I think he'd be here today. The other two characters on the side are some of my best cousins. Butchie, the skinny one with the hat, with the knees, the little knock knees, Butchie, Charles. They would hate I'm telling. And Michael, the one looked so mean. He thought he was a Casanova. You could not tell Michael he wasn't God's gift to women. So I love this picture because it just takes me back in my childhood. My collision of my two loves, music and law. I was at college, Berea College. Please look up Berea College. It's no tuition. It's a work study college where you work in order to earn your room and board. And I wouldn't have been to college except for Berea. I was about to graduate from college, and Professor Michael Berheide sent for me. He was a political science teacher. I took no political science. My degrees were in music, my first love, English, kind of maybe a second love, and music and French. Music, literature, and French were my degrees. And I got a word that the political science professor wanted me to come to his office. And at that time, I was really struggling with life. I was kind of caught up between who am I and why do people like me, or do people like me? And just in that quandary, I had recently done a performance in Carmen Jones. I did music and theater, and I was playing Frankie, the second lead role. And I had, we were preparing for opening night, and I got a call from my high school sweetheart. I went running down the hall to answer the call. It was Billy, and so excited. It's opening night, call from high school sweetheart. And when I answered the phone, or went to the phone, he sounded a little concerned, and I was worried. And he says to me, on opening night, he says, Diane, I found someone else, and we're breaking up. That was not what I was expecting to hear. There was no congratulations. There was no break a leg, any of the things I was thinking. And it was opening night. I had hours before I had to prepare for this play. And I will tell you that opening night was the best night ever. I played Frankie. I beat out that rhythm on the drum. I had my little table dance. I was fabulous. And we went on. The show went for four nights, and it was a huge success. And I couldn't tell anybody, because how do you tell your, But after the show was over, I started wrestling with, does anybody like me? Why do they like me? I knew I had music. At the time, I was interested. I was busy with theater. I played violin in the college orchestra. I played violin in the community orchestra. I was a part of the Black Student Union. I played church. I played for Middletown Baptist Church in the community there at Berea. I was a music TA. I had my job. Everything was going for me. But I was questioning, and I realized that that moment that I didn't deal with caught up with me. So when Professor Braheide called for me, I'm like, what does he want from me? I was kind of feeling like I was pouring out, and nobody was pouring in. What could this man want? I don't know him. He wants me to play the piano. He wants a violin for the Messiah. What? But I put him off for a while, and eventually he wasn't going to let me go. So I showed up, and Professor Braheide says, Diane, what are you planning to do when you graduate? Well, I was on my way to Europe for my last college study, and I thought I was going to be an English professor. I loved English literature, and I loved my English professors. Any professors out there, shout out to you all. But I was going to study literature. And he broke down, well, you could do literature, and you could be a professor, and this is how much you're going to make. And he broke, or you can go to law school and write your own ticket. I was intrigued. I had grown up pretty poor, you know. My family from D.C. to Birmingham, and my grandmother was from Chicago. My grandfather was from Birmingham, and so my grandmother had that mean, heavy-handed side, and my grandfather was the gentle one who took me to church to kind of soften some of it up. And we were poor. My mother made $12,000, and she always wanted to own her own home. But she was never able to move out of my grandparents' house with us until she was 70, when she owned her first home. So to me, home ownership is really important, because my mom wanted a home. She finally got a home. My home is in honor of my mom. So writing my own ticket, I'm like, well, let's talk about this. And so we prepared, and he got me ready for the LSAT, and he had me come to his office and study. And he invested in me. And I went on and took the LSAT. I went on to Europe and got word that I passed the LSAT. I was accepted in the law school I attended, and I'm like, now what am I going to do? All I knew was music. I literally had played the piano since I was 5 and started playing for churches and getting paid when I was 14. This law thing, I really didn't know. And there I was in law school, and they're teaching me about criminal law, particularly. And the teacher asked the question, if someone assaults you, hits you, no, he didn't say assault, he said, if someone strikes you on the metro, he asked, what crime has been committed, and what do you do? And my answer was, you hit them back. And that's exactly what the class did. They all laughed. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with that answer, because I grew up in a household where we had to fight. My grandmother made us fight, and her thing, I believe now, is that she wanted us to be able to take care of ourselves. We were in a segregated South, and we weren't always wanted. And she wanted to make sure, again, she didn't say these words. It's years later that I figured that she just wanted us to make sure we could take care of ourselves. So I fought. I fought because kids teased me because my nose was flat. That was a beat down. I fought because people teased me because I had a gap in my teeth. That was a fight. If you disrespected me, it was a fight, because I had to stand up for myself. And then my grandmother's uncle would come home at Christmas time and check us to see how many fights that you've been in. That was the culture that I grew up in. And now I'm in law school, and they're telling me it's a crime. I could have had a record. But nobody was calling the police then. So eventually, when I came and became a criminal prosecutor, you can believe that I took the lessons that I learned and grew up with, and I had compassion, one, for the victim, because again, while I was always fighting, I didn't start a fight. And that was a rule in the house. We couldn't start a fight, but we couldn't back down from a fight. And so I knew what it was like to be a victim, to be picked on, to be teased, to be less than. And that picture, those little shoes I had on, that was a fight, because they weren't good enough for some people. My grandmother made my dresses. That was a fight, because I didn't wear store-bought dresses. So when I started prosecuting, I started looking at the assaults I was coming across my desk. What's feeding this stuff? What's the anger? Why the anger? Who are the victims? And you start talking with people and hearing their stories and recognizing what restorative justice is. Because every bully I fought, after the fight, we became best of friends. Every single one. And so I took that with me as I'm prosecuting. What are the real issues here? What can we do to make it right? And not only for the victim, but also for the perpetrator. Because if we don't fix that issue, there are going to be more victims. There are going to be more issues. There are going to be more problems. And so I reached all the way back in my past and collided, bringing people together. Because with my music, all it was bringing people together, harmonies, listening to the tones. Where's the alto part? Where's the soprano part? Where's the melody? Where's the bass and the baritone? And bringing and connecting those things. And it took me a minute to see the connection between music and law. But the way I would study a song or the way I'd study a concert piece was the way I'd study a case. And helping bring resolution. And so, of course, when I found out that my office had authored an amendment that would remove the Minority Bar Association from an ad hoc committee that would help select a judge, of course I took off from my work and I went to the council meeting and I spoke up. And I spoke up on behalf of the Minority Bar because, of course, I had been a founder of the Minority Bar, one of the founding members. The voices of those who are crying out marginalized was important and incredible to me to be a part of. And then I realized the backlash of speaking out. And I realized the trouble that you get in when you speak up for those who won't speak or those who can't speak, those who don't have a voice. And then I remembered my grandfather who worked in a segregated steel mill in Alabama. And all the times he couldn't speak up. But he sat there lovingly and kindly and patiently, making sure I learned the softness, the other side of fighting and taking on the bully. Make sure I learned kindness. Make sure I understood as I played piano for the churches the message and the music that I was playing and teaching. To understand that there's a better way of dealing with conflict. That understanding people and communicating is key. Sometimes we agree to disagree, and that's okay too. And then recognizing that it doesn't matter what it is, that my nose is flat or there's a gap in my teeth. I'm like, Mom, can you just take me to the dentist? And we didn't realize, again, it was a matter of money at the time. But realizing that I wouldn't tease you because of any shortcomings you have, because I don't want to be teased. And processing those things, those lessons, and recognizing at the end of the day, kindness really matters. Taking your time to encourage and feed and speak words of life to the downtrodden, to those that look hopeless or seem hopeless, because you never know where you're planting that seed. You never know where that one person is. Like Professor Berheidi, I didn't know him and didn't realize who he was until 15 years after I had graduated from college and I was well in my career, and I went back to a homecoming, and they called Michael Berheidi as the announcer for a basketball game. I'm like, that's the man who pulled me aside and said, Diane, you can do better. Diane, you can do different. And I shifted everything I loved, my first love, to learning, unlearning some things so that I can be a good attorney, understanding their laws and their rules and their regulations and that they benefit the community, and being a part of that change, that dynamic bringing of peace and community in the right way, in a way that helps and heals. I still do my music. It is a second nature because, again, I have fallen in love with law and the people that I've met in my practice. And they've been kind. The attorneys, just when I was about to give up, they elected me president of the Bar Association to let me know that my work isn't done yet. And I recognize that my brother, who ought to be here, who was such a better person than me, he wouldn't have hurt a flea. He didn't fight. He wouldn't fight. This man here, and I recognize that he's gone and I'm not, there's a reason. And it's to live out who my granddaddy was and balance who my grandmother was and make sure the experiences that I endured, I don't endure or put on anyone else, and help those who are still bullying and committing crimes. Again, see, there's accountability and there's restoration. If we can get those two things, I believe we have a better Pierce County, a better world. I certainly love to talk with Donald Trump.